This video is a recording from the MenProvement Podcast, brought to you by MenProvement.com, the #1 self-improvement resource strictly for men. Go there today to see all podcasts, improve yourself as a man, and get access to 3 free ebooks, including one that will help you triple your testosterone naturally. Thank you and enjoy.
Ready to take your life to the next level? Then you're in the right place. Get all the information you need to be better, improve everything, and live life like a pro. This is the MenProvement Podcast with Sean Russell.
Welcome back, guys, to the MenProvement Podcast, brought to you by MenProvement.com, the #1 self-improvement site strictly for men. Head there after the show and get our free ebook on how to triple your testosterone naturally. I'm your host, Sean Russell, a self-improvement enthusiast who is obsessed with taking his life to the next level. And I created this podcast to help myself and guys like you do just that. Today's show is part 1 of an unplanned 2-part series that is aimed towards helping the modern man who doesn't really know what he wants to do with his life or what his true purpose is, figure it out, and then go out and do it. I know that a lot of people that listen to this show and any other success podcast are working jobs that they feel unfulfilled at, and I know what it feels like. I worked for 2 years as a mechanical engineer, and I absolutely hated it. I did it for the money. It wasn't who I was. It wasn't my passion, and I felt empty inside. I felt stressed out, and I didn't know where I was going. So I'm really passionate about this topic and helping guys figure out what they want to do with their life so then they can go ahead and do it. Because if you don't know what you want to do, doing it is even harder. I want you to feel excited every night before you go to bed to wake up tomorrow morning and create your legacy. It's one of the most amazing feelings, and I think everyone can achieve that and deserves to achieve that. So in part 1 here today, I talk with Michael Anderson, who is a speaker and coach who teaches people how to achieve joy and how to become happier in their lives. And I talk with him about how to break out and figure out what you want to do with your life. And then next week, on next Sunday, I talk with Mike Maller, who's a badass motherfucker, and he totally just goes ham on conventional wisdom and self-help wisdom and pretty much gives a listener a kick in the ass on what they need to do to make their purpose happen. Because it's great if you figure out what you want to do. That's great. But then you need to be realistic about how you're going to do it, and you need to know how to do it. So this show today will hopefully give you a better idea on how to figure out what you want to do. And then make sure you stay tuned until next week, or if you're listening to this late, listen to the next episode to figure out how to do it and how to be realistic and what to expect along the way. So with that, we'll jump into this first episode, which is all about how to figure out what you want to do with your life, how to find inner joy and stop chasing exterior happiness, which never really fulfills you, and much more with R. Michael Anderson. Hey guys, I'm here with Michael Anderson of ExecutiveJoy.com. He's an author, coach. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
I'm real good, Sean. Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. When I heard an interview with you the other day, I immediately thought that I had to get you on because what you talk about, what we're going to cover in the show, I know so many people are going through it right now. But before we get into all the Q&A, why don't you talk about your backstory and how you got to where you are today and where you actually are today?
Sure. So I've had an exciting backstory. You know, it's hard to tell on radio, but you know, I'm 6'9". So
yeah, I saw that.
I played semi-pro basketball. I say I was always good at the scoreboard of life. You know, I played semi-pro ball. I've lived in 6 countries. I've founded 3 international software companies. I used to party at the Playboy Mansion. Though, yeah, nice. I've been up there a couple times, and those like material successes didn't leave me with any internal joy and fulfillment. And I really looked at my life, and although I've created some great things, I just didn't have that happiness. And I had a low point that had to do with a nasty business lawsuit, the divorce, drugs, and alcohol, and really caused me to reflect. And I earned a world famous master's degree in spiritual psychology, which changed my life so much. And I saw all my other competitive, driven, athletic, entrepreneur, executive friends going through the same thing. that I decided to divest myself, sell off the software companies to be a full-time professional speaker, author, facilitator that helps other people go through the same life-changing transformations that I went through.
That's incredible. So you're telling me the Playboy Mansion, that didn't bring you inner fulfillment?
For very short periods of time. Very short
right?
periods of time, yes.
It's an incredible story, the roller coaster that you went through. And the reason I connected with this so much is because I went through a big hardship in my life for about 4 years when I was struggling with an anxiety disorder and some chronic fatigue. So overcoming that was a big driver in why I do what I do today. So I was just wondering if you think that, if you'd never hit that low point in your life, would you have been the guy you are today?
I don't think so. Actually, no. And that's one of the things we work on. And when we can become really in tune with ourselves and what was something people call conscious, it's I can have gratitude for where I was at, because, like you said, Sean, without that, I wouldn't have made such a right 90-degree turn in my life. Without those quote unquote wake up calls, I would have never taken the strong steps to invest my time and money into such an enormous program unless I came to that low of a point.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of my favorite quotes is that extraordinary hardship often prepares ordinary people for extraordinary destinies. And I'm just, a question that I ask myself a lot is, how can people kind of get this mindset, the mindset that a lot of people who they go through struggles and they break out. And I think there's actually a term for it, post-traumatic growth in an extreme sense, where I've heard some TED Talks with people who have had post-concussion syndrome, who afterwards, after healing, after 3 years, they come out and they're just like, they have this thirst for life and they go out and they just do incredible things. How do you think people can gain that mindset without ever having to, go through the shit per se?
Well, it's a couple things come to mind when you say that, Sean, because a guy named Martin Seligman, who was the founder of what they call positive psychology, in his book Flourish, he talks about that they studied a bunch of soldiers, and yes, a certain percentage get post-traumatic stress disorder, and there's a lot of factors that go into that, how much they were in combat, how much this happened, their lives before that, though a lot more of them that make it out healthy actually have more resilience. So, but they're actually strengthening the resilience muscle through these traumatic events. And so exactly what you're talking about, we learn, I talk about the hero's journey, where, when you look at, I know it's a funny comparison, but when you look at all the heroes out there that, they've all went through their hardships. So we all have tough lives. And Sean, I love the fact that you talk about your anxiety and your chronic fatigue syndrome, because for me, I always thought I was messed up. I was broken. That everybody else was perfect. And I realized that everybody else is just really good at showing this perfect life, that we all have these issues. So it's great that you and I were vulnerable and we're authentic and we're spreading our message, because once I got to know some other entrepreneurs, I realized that not everybody's happy. Not everybody's living this dream life, that other people, are using drugs, that are having depressions, etc. So we're all human. We just have been able to put on a good face around that.
Absolutely. And that's something I tell people all the time, is that, everyone's got skeletons in their closet, no matter how perfect they may seem. There's, everyone's going through something or has gone through something. And I haven't talked about my story much. I was actually planning on, telling the whole story when I do an interview on Knowledge for Men in December, which was what you were on, because I've kind of been caught up in everything and building a business, but it's definitely something that I want to do because so many people have done it. I mean, a big person I look up to is like Lewis Howes, and he came out and he told the story of how, he was molested as a child and everything, and being vulnerable. It definitely, like you said, it helps people who are going through similar things realize that, they're not alone out there. So I love your story. And what I really wanted to ask you and talk about was, I have a lot of personal friends and a lot of people who contact me who are working like a 9-to-5 job in the city, but it ends up being like a 9-to-8 job, and they're tired all the time, and they're just, they feel kind of almost lied to after going to school and everything. And now they're here and they're like, what did I do all this for? I'm totally unfulfilled. And I was in the same position as an engineer for 2 years. And I'm lucky that I found this stuff that I'm just so passionate about. But what do you suggest to people who just, they don't know what they want to do with their lives, but they're stuck in a job that they hate?
So I have a couple good things for you. So the first thing is, and I do an exercise when I go into, for example, management teams. I do a lot of facilitation, and we do a thing called Inspire, Expire, Flow. And it's me and my buddy Ron Harrell, who's another great guy and a business leader. I'm in San Diego. He's another prominent business leader in San Diego. He helped me develop this. And again, what positive psychology, and Martin Seligman found out that happy people play to their strengths. I mean, it used to be the fact that there used to be the thought that you find out what your weaknesses are, and then you work like heck on your weaknesses so they're not a weakness anymore. You know, that sucks.
Yeah.
If I don't like doing math, don't have me do math, right? All right. So, and so there's an exercise. It's called Inspire, Expire, Flow. This is in my book. We'll talk about my book at the end, but if you want more info on this, is an exercise in my book. And basically, you just go through and you write down what inspires you. You know, where do you get enjoyment out of in your life? What expires you? And then what are you in the flow? And Sean, you know what I mean by flow?
Yeah, I absolutely do. Yeah.
You want to give a quick definition?
Yeah, go ahead.
So flow is, sports people are the best people that we talk about flow. You know, when Michael Jordan or LeBron James scores 60 in a playoff game, they're in the flow. It's like when you're doing what you were meant to do. Mm-hmm. I used to be a programmer. Sometimes I'd be in this programming flow, and I was just in this bliss. It's when you sit down to do something, you think it's been half an hour. Next thing you know, 4 hours went by. So it's like this natural state where you're so present, you just feel everything. It's like time slows down, but yet it speeds by. And a lot of salespeople, when they're in a sales position, they are in the flow. So you want to reflect on your life. What do you love doing? What do you hate doing? And where are you in the flow? Now, if we start with flow, that's where you're normally adding the best value in the world. And you may not know your flow yet, but a lot of us do. So it takes some introspection. Mm-hmm. And then you want to really take a good look at your expire list. And you want to get everything you can off your expire list. And even if you can't get it off now, you want to make changes to get it off. And then you want to find your inspire list. And you want to find out how you can spend more of your time doing what you love to do. And it sounds so basic, but it can be so life-changing.
Yeah, I know what you mean by flow, because I was a semi-pro soccer player. I know, and I kind of lost that flow state as soon as I stopped playing. And that's the problem with a lot of my friends who were athletes with me, and now they don't play anymore, and they're kind of just almost empty inside. It's a big problem that is not really covered, especially with college athletes, and like that's why you see those guys who leave the NFL and they're committing suicide because they don't have much going on in their life anymore. It's scary. And I went through that hard time. What I wanted to ask you was, if you don't know, like if you don't have a flow, like I found my flow again. I could work on MenProvement.com for 4 or 5 hours straight, and as much as I hate being on the computer because I am an athletic guy, it's the one thing I can do on the computer. What would you recommend to someone who's lost their flow, doesn't have the ability to become a professional athlete anymore, if that was their flow?
Well, they have to spend more time doing what they enjoy doing, and they have to be honest with themselves about what they've been doing. I have this guy who came to me for some coaching, and he founded and ran a pretty big digital marketing agency. So it's like an internet marketing agency. And so I got talking to him, and he loves being in front of customers. He loves that customer interaction. He hates HR. He hates being the boss. He hates that kind of leadership, sort of the administrative leadership. Mm-hmm. He understands the product. He understands strategy. He understands customers. And I said, well, so what's your role there? He said, well, I'm the president CEO. I go, well, hire another president and get your ass in front of customers, man. That's where you make money. That's where you shine. That's where you provide value. Mm. But he had this belief that, hey, if I'm the founder, I have to be the president. Well, you can't do that and be miserable your whole life and probably cap out where you're capping out revenue-wise. Or you can let go of your ego a little bit, hire somebody to do all the administrative crap. Whoops. And then and then go with it from there. And that's what he started to do. But it's because he had these beliefs. So oftentimes we have these beliefs. Some people love programming and they should not be managers, but they think they have to be managers or whatever it is. Just embrace what you do awesomely and do that in the world and provide enough value, and value will come back.
Yeah, man, that's very similar to what I learned from Lewis Howes' podcast, The School of Greatness, where he tells people who don't know what they really want to do with their life or lacking purpose in their life to imagine their perfect day and sit down every day and write down their perfect day until they really have a vision of the ideal person they want to be, hour to hour, how it feels, who they're with, what their job title is, whether they sold their company and what they're doing, and then just get it all down on paper until you have this real clear vision of who you want to be, and then set your goal to who you want to be, write it down on your wall, sign it, and then you know who you want to be and you can start taking steps towards becoming that person. So it's very similar to yours. And I'm just curious because you talked about the Inspire and Expire list in your exercise. And the Inspire list is what inspires you and gets you going and gets you flowing and excited to get up. But what goes on your Expire list?
It's Inspire and Expire. So you really want to be honest with what expires you, what you don't look forward to doing. I get together with a bunch of managers and we'll all do this like a management team. And it's funny because somebody will always be like, I love dealing with problem clients. And everybody else will be like, I hate dealing with problem clients. Yeah. And so, but they're the ones dealing with them. And the one person's like, man, I love it because I get to solve these complex problems. It's like this problem solving thing. And then we simply shift all the problem clients to this one person's desk. They're happy. Everybody else is happy. And all that happened was some honest communication. And so just when you go through and make your list, really be honest with and make an attempt, actually ask to see if you have a boss or whatever, tell them what you like to do and what you not like to do. Because a lot of good bosses are open to that. But so many people be like, oh, well, I could never ask my boss that. Well, why don't you ask him that and step out of your comfort zone and just ask. Just even ask the question.
Absolutely. And, if you're I think it goes the same way if you're in a job and that entire job is on your Expire list, which I think was probably my case. I don't know how I ended up being an engineer. I just went to school. I went to school to party and play soccer, and then I ended up with an engineering degree. Soccer ended, and I was stuck in this office, and I'm like, wow, what am I doing here? But I wasn't, I never thought ahead, but that's my past, and that's why I'm so motivated to do what I want to do now. But you mentioned, what I wanted to say on that point was if your whole job's on the Expire point, would you recommend leaving? If your job's just not making you happy, then leaving?
I would. Or is there somewhere, like, for example, if you're an engineer, but you're like you, Sean, you're a people guy, there's actually, I think when you really look at it, you really want to make money and add value to the world. It's when people are good at two things. So for example, if you sell engineering software or products or whatever, you're taking your personal ability with some of your background, which is rare. Because if you're just an accountant, you'll never make a lot of money. If you're just an engineer, you'll probably never make a lot of money unless you're the absolute top one in the top 5 in the United States.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's when you mix two disciplines, even if you know engineering, accounting, you're going to that's where you really when you can bridge the two gaps. When you know marketing and sports, the sports field, that's where you're going to add value and make money. And that's where you can use, what's maybe natural in your personality to what maybe your background is or your history has been. And what you said, Sean, people, I believe, should make more changes in this world. We get so caught up and our ego gets caught up in the status quo, just doing what we've been doing. And so many people, we can look at this from a couple different things. One is you got to take ownership of your life. I do a session called Own or Victim, and we can either sit there and, to be honest, complain about our jobs, or we can make changes to get ourselves in a new position. And I can think of a lot of reasons why I'd want to wait till next month or 3 months from now or whatever. And you're welcome to just stay and complain, or you're welcome to suck it up and make some changes in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely love that you just said that. It's great advice. I was just listening to someone speak today on that. If you want to make a change in your life and you're not happy, then you should have your full-time job and you should have a part-time job that's, trying to build your passion when you're home, and your part-time job doesn't include watching TV, and it doesn't include, doing all this stuff and complaining. Like you said, you have to go out to make it happen, and it could take, 1 to 3 years, but you have to start. You have to start today.
You do. And just to have that spark. And even if you do it for free, because to me, as long as you enjoy doing something, don't get caught up in how much like you said, if you get this part-time job, and even if you love doing it or you want to get into a field, just do it for free. Because I've always believed if you're really into something and you're good at it and you're providing value, the universe is going to find a way to pay you back. And you may not know how that's going to be, but it takes a little bit of faith to do that. And if you really let go of your beliefs that may be holding you back and do it, I think that's when great things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. What you when you were talking in the beginning, you were talking about how you had all these incredible things in your life, but you were unfulfilled. And I want to talk about that, how a lot of people, it seems like they think like the next job is going to make them happy, or the next, upgrade they can have to their apartment or their car can make them happy. And the farther they get, the more, they never reach that happiness. So yeah, that's how I love, there's this idea, this concept, I'm sure you've heard of it, of be, do, have.
A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, instead of say you just lost your girlfriend and you're miserable because you're single, instead of being miserable and thinking, all I need to do is get a girlfriend and then I'll be happy. It's, in reality, you need to figure out how to be happy now, and that will probably end up helping you get a girlfriend a lot faster. And I think a lot of people have lost touch on that concept, and I love it. So what do you think is the key to achieving internal fulfillment versus chasing external fulfillment?
Sure. And let's dig into that from the psychological point of view, because I'm a psychology guy, and I also like dealing with like studies. Like it's cool to hear all these like new age people say, "Hey, I think this is cool and this is cool and it sounds good," but I like when there's studies behind things.
Absolutely.
And what they've found out is when something external happens, whether you get a date with that hot chick, or you lose that job, or whatever, you get that car, the most an external circumstance will ever affect your happiness, positive or negative, is 3 months. Now, there's the only exception is a family tragedy. So outside of family tragedy, an external, whether it's money, job, work, women, whatever it is, it's 3 months. And normally it's hours or days at the most.
Mm-hmm.
And that's even if you win the lottery, the most that'll affect your happiness is 3 months. And then you go back to your baseline. And what personal transformation is, and I love this, is to be guided from internal fulfillment rather than external fulfillment. And I give an example, and I say it's the difference between happiness and joy, and I use them interchangeably. But to me, happiness is that external circumstance. Because, Sean, if I went to the Playboy Mansion tonight, I would have fun. And that's okay. And that's okay to get those little dopamine bursts and have that fun, or driving my buddy's Lamborghini or something. Yes, that's fun, and that's okay to have that happiness. But if somebody gave me $1 million, I would be happy. I'd be happy for a little while, but then I'd go to my baseline. But if the example is, if I built a business from scratch, and the business that I was really proud of gave me $1 million in revenue over a certain period of time, or profit to my pocket, that would be joy. And the joy would come from, look what I created, look at what I've done. And that joy can last with you forever. And that's why we call reconnecting with your joy, because I can be proud of that company in 20 years as I am now. It just, like you said, it's like, how can I connect to that joy when I need it, when I need that upliftment to really give me that confidence and maybe get rid of some anxiety as it is.
Yeah.
So, and when we talk about doing things, that's, we really want to connect with how we're helping others, because at our core, we all like to help others. So when we can frame our job or whatever we're doing, because I'm sure, Sean, you like doing this stuff, but I think it really gives you a sense of achievement and accomplishment to really, when you get that feedback, that one email from that one guy that says, and I quit my job, got my awesome job, this new job because of you, because of MenProvement.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing this, right?
Yeah, I have a whole inbox section, and I save them, because I love to read them.
Yeah. And when we talk about be happy now, it's like, what can we look at and where can we reconnect to where we're at now? If my divorce, I went through a divorce, and, nobody sets out to go through a divorce, but I would have never really learned what I needed to learn about myself to be in a happy relationship, if not for that process. And so in a way, that was part of my learning that I could have never gotten by reading a book or meditating or doing any exercise. I had to go through that. So actually I can say, you know what? I learned a hard lesson, but you know what? Now I know it. And now I can be that much more connected with the next woman I'm with.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. And I guess the next step would be to keep going on this linear line here. Say you figure out what you want to do with your life. You leave you work for a year on the side. You end up being able to leave your job. You get inner fulfillment, but now you're like I have been for the past 5 months, and you're working 12-hour days, and it's tough to achieve a work-life balance, and that's what your book is about, essentially. So I would love, personally, to hear your tips on achieving a better work-life balance.
Well, Sean, the definition of work-life balance isn't that I'm only working 8 to 10 hours every day. It's not measured by day. And, you've made a decision to bootstrap a business, my friend. Mm-hmm. And so you are going to be working your butt off. So I would just, if there's anything I would keep in context, and it's to set some, if I were you, because, you're doing something incredibly difficult and you're doing something incredibly world changing. And that in this case takes some sacrifice. And I hate to use the word sacrifice, but it's in a way, it's what you're doing. Because you're creating from such a place of raw resources. It's not like you got $1 million invested. It's not like you took over somebody else's. So sometimes periods of creation take that. And I think what's important is to be honest with ourselves. So for example, if you're married in a relationship and, something in work comes up where you're going to have to work a lot, you have a conversation with your spouse or your girlfriend to say, hey, these next 3 weeks, I need you to support me because I'm going to be working 10 to 12 hours a day. Don't try to hide it from her. Don't try to BS. Don't try to BS yourself to say, I'll just leave after 8 hours when it's not realistic. And then just the same as if you have a health issue or something going on, maybe, your wife or your kid gets sick, you should go to your work and you should say, hey, I worked those 12-hour days and we needed that proposal done. I'd like to leave after 6 hours for the next 2 weeks because my wife's going through some stuff. So I think we want to take balance in the grand scheme of things and be honest with ourselves about that. But to take that to the next step, Sean, I think it's important, even no matter how much, for example, we're working, is to find some balance in the fact of no matter how hard I work, every 2 hours I'm going to take a walk around the block, and every other day I'm going to get to the gym, and twice a week I'm going to do yoga. And these are the things I make sure I do because I need that to stay sane through these tough parts.
Yeah, I love it. And I've definitely progressed a lot in the way I achieve a work-life balance. I mean, when I first started this, I was pretty much bedridden, and I honestly couldn't even leave the house. So that's why I got started on the internet stuff, because I was never an internet guy, and it was really out of necessity. And I just kind of fell in love with it while, trying to help myself grow and cure myself, essentially. And then it just went, way past that onto helping everyone else and just bettering myself as much as I can. But I was forced to, I could only work for a couple hours because I had to conserve energy and things like that. And now that I've got my energy back, nobody can be on the computer for, more than 10 hours a day. I don't care who you are, because my eyes are so strained sometimes, but I've gotten pretty good. Like you said, listen to your body and take breaks and take days off, get enough sleep, because I hear people like 50 Cent talk about, like sleep. I don't have time for sleep. Well, like if I want to be successful, I'm not going to sleep. I think that's total bullshit because I feel like taking your rest is one of the most important things. And I like how you said, talk to your spouse about it, because I don't have like a wife or even a girlfriend right now, but if I did, she'd probably hate me, Yeah. So I think it is important to talk to your wife or your girlfriend before you even get started on a big business venture that's going to take up most of your time.
Even your friends. I mean, send them a text, say, "Hey, I'm busy for the next 2 weeks. I'll catch up with you then." So they're like, "Where'd Sean go?" It's just about your community, just being honest, and it's an honesty with ourselves. And I think it's really important for us to be disciplined and to set really clear boundaries with ourselves. I'm definitely going to go. I'm probably going to go to the gym every other day. Like I'm definitely going to go to the gym every other day, and really be in integrity with the commitments with ourselves.
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned that, because routine is definitely very helpful. Making sure that I get meditate, and making sure that I'm off the computer 2 to 3 hours before bed to calm down. These are I couldn't be as proactive as I am if I didn't do these things. So it's great to mention. In your book, The Experiment, I heard a little bit about what it's about, and I love the concept. Why don't you talk about how you got the name The Experiment, and how it kind of changes the game when it comes to productivity and procrastination?
I will. And what I might do real quick before that is I have some unique content around why we procrastinate. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Let me jump into that quick. And it's really about stepping out of our comfort zone. Now, the reason we do this, and I always like to know the psychological reasons why we do things. Because I've always wondered, why do I want to sit on the couch? Why don't I want to do my next blog post? Why don't I want to, take the steps to that next job? What keeps me here? And after doing some of my spiritual psychology in a book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, I know. And what it is when we're 4, 5, 6 years old, Sean, the only thing that we want in our lives is the love and adoration of our parents, our caregivers. It doesn't really matter what I'm playing with, what my toys are, what I'm having to eat, as long as mom and dad are paying attention to me. That's all that my life revolves around. And there's a thing called conditional parenting, which our parents, they want to do the best by us, but sometimes they haven't had some of the emotional intelligence that we know about now. I'll give you a couple examples. My dad was really tough on me. And he did that because he wanted me to be strong and all this other stuff. So if I was in a race with 100 other kids and I was 4 years old and they said, go, I raced as hard as I can, and I got second out of 100 kids. What do you think actually I got third out of 100 kids. What do you think my dad said?
I mean, based on what you said, I would imagine he would not be the happiest dad in the world.
Yeah, he's like, oh man, third is no good. You got to pump your arms harder, and then you got to you're not running hard enough. I'm like, man, I ran as hard as I can. So next race goes, I pump my arms as hard as I can, I run as fast as I can, and I come in second out of 100. And what's my dad say again?
Yeah, you gotta pump your arms even harder.
Yeah, it's not first. And so I make a connection at that time. I make a connection with my dad's acceptance and my dad's love and becoming first and becoming perfect. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's the age where we're making these connections at last they become subconscious. Another example is when I'm 5 years old, I get an A+ on my math test. I go to my mom, and my mom goes, "Oh my gosh, Michael, you got an A+. I love you so much. You're perfect." It's making that same connection. When I get an A+, when I show up perfectly, I get that love and adoration of my mom. So the next time I go and I have the choice, so it's a couple years later, and I have the choice to take a hard test or an easy test, I take the easy test. And then if you take it to the next step, if I have a choice to take an easy test or a no test, I take the no test because there's no chance of failing and losing that love and acceptance. Mm. So when we talk about procrastination, that's where procrastination comes from, because we're avoiding our tests.
Yeah.
We are comfortable where we're at, and we don't want to do anything that's going to potentially end up in a rejection, because that's going to reject as a person, and we're going to lose that love and connection, which our whole world revolves around. So it's a little bit deep. But,
yeah, it is. I was wondering what you suggest for parents. Can parents avoid that, planting their kids with these connections? Well,
they did. And I'm not a parenting expert, but I did get some context in again, the book's Mindset by Carol Dweck. And it's awesome because she studied achieving people and not achieving people. And she studied them. And she studied athletes. She studied kids. And you're an athlete, so this will be a fun conversation. But she said what people that achieve, or kids that get good grades, or whatever it does, when they fail, they take the mindset. She breaks it into two things: a learning mindset or a fixed mindset. When people that achieve fail, they take the mindset that they've studied the wrong way, that they practiced the wrong way, they didn't practice hard enough, they did something in preparation, that they have the ability to do it, that something leading up to that wasn't in their favor. People with the fixed mindset think that they're broken or they're wrong or they're stupid, so they quit trying. So when you have the learning mindset, you're like, whoa, well, I just didn't prepare correctly or enough. So what am I going to do next time? I truly take it as a learning thing. And if you look at athletes, I mean, take some stud baseball player. He's in high school, he's hitting all these home runs. He's in college, he's hitting all these home runs. Everybody's like, man, Joey, you don't even have to practice, man. You're so good, you don't have to practice. Then he gets to AAA ball, and all of a sudden he's not the stud anymore. And so instead of taking batting practice and hitting the weight room, he just goes and sulks and talk about how much an idiot the coach is and how, it's just BS and blah, 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 blah. And she's really studied this. And the athletes that are like, you know what? I'm going to go hit the weight room harder because I didn't do well in practice. I'm going to go talk to my coach and see what I can do. They're the people that make it to the next level. And that's why you see so many of these awesome superstar athletes flaming out. It's because of their mindset.
Mm. Yeah, I've heard of that fixed mindset versus learning mindset before. And I think, adopting a learning mindset is possible, right? No matter what mindset you have now.
It is. And it's so interesting because the books, read a lot of new books. I go back and read the books that I've read before that really impact me to get them at a deeper level. And it's like I'm on the third time of mindset, and I keep finding, because I know this pretty well, but I keep finding other places in my life that I'm showing up as a fixed mindset or a victim. I can't even remember something I was listening to the last time, and I'm like, oh man, I'm totally doing that. So even though we know this stuff, it's like really getting it deeper and deeper into our lives. And what we want to do, the easy to use system that I teach people to get over this fixed mindset and to get us into action is I call it experimenting. And well, let's go back really quick one time. So when you have a kid, instead of what she says is you don't even want to praise him if he gets an A. You just want to praise him if the kid is challenging himself, his or herself, and then also going at it full force. So they may challenge themselves and take like a 6th grade class when they're in a 5th grade class, study their butt off, and maybe get a C. That should get much more praise than them taking the 5th grade course and getting an A+. In fact, she says if they keep getting A+, you should say, oh, well, it looks like you're not challenging yourself.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, that's awesome. Because I'll tell you, if I really work to take every challenge I can in my life, go for it, and not be as attached to the outcome. Of course, my preference is to win. I'm more looking at it as a learning opportunity. And I'll tell you, I play in a lot more games now, and I show up, and I may not win as much, but I'm getting massively more experience, and I'm definitely evolving as a person much quicker than I did when I played it safe.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. This is turning into the parenting podcast. Learning some good stuff.
And so, the next step is changing our definition of success. So our definition of success is no longer winning. It's no longer being perfect. Our definition of success is trying things out, playing in the game and playing hard. And I do that. I teach people to do that, and that's the name of the book. It's called The Experiment. So what I mean by that is when you want to make a change in your life, call it an experiment. Take the smallest viable product. Some people call it the MVP, the minimum viable product. The way you can really taste doing that. Do it on a small scale. See if you like it. If you don't like it, don't do it or change something. If you like it, keep doing it. And because the only way we fail in an experiment is not to conduct it. And I'll give you an example. So a friend of mine, Mary, called me up and she was crying. I said, Mary, what's up? She's like, hey, I just went to the doctor and I got diagnosed with gluten intolerance. That means she's allergic to wheat. taking it hard. She goes, well, I eat bagels for breakfast, sandwich for lunch, pasta for dinner. Those all have wheat in them. And I'm really freaked out because I don't know how to change every meal I'm going to eat from now till I die. That's a lot of meals. She was just freaked out because she has to make this total lifestyle change. And she just got this info. I go, I hear you, Mary. Well, you don't actually have to change every meal you eat for the rest of your life. She said, well, what do you mean? I go, well, take a deep breath and let's try an experiment. And I said, Mary, can you go the next 24 hours, the next 3 meals, and take wheat out of your diet for those 3 meals? She thought for a second. She's like, yeah, I can do 24 hours. So, okay. I said, well, focus on that first 24 hours. So we have a call 24 hours later, and she goes, you know what, Michael, wasn't that hard? Breakfast is good. Lunch was good. I need something different for snacks because I used to eat pretzels, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, that was actually really, really easy, easier than I thought. I said, okay, well, let's do a 1-week experiment then. So we did it for 1 week, and then we had a regroup. And now she's off and on her way. But do you see how changing what you eat for the rest of your life can be intimidating, but changing what you eat as an experiment for the next 24 hours can be much easier in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an incredible psychological hack.
It is. And so you're right. Psychologically, when our brain gets these things these goals that are big and audacious, which, people like me, you, and the MenProvement listeners, that's what we all put out there, which is great to have those goals, but it freaks the brain out psychologically because the brain can't control it. It doesn't know how to frame it. It doesn't know if it can commit to these things. So it's okay to have these goals, but you really want to focus on these little experiments. And again, when it's an experiment, if it doesn't work, that's okay. If I want to run a marathon and I got to run 5 times a day for the next 3 months, man, that's a lot. I'm like, man, do I run before work? Do I run after work? Do I need new shoes? I'm like, I don't have to worry about it. The next week, I'm going to run once for 15 minutes before work, once for 15 minutes after work. I'm going to use my same shoes. And then if I need new shoes, I'll buy them. So I don't know it's not a decision anymore. It's just something that I go do, I play with, and then I adjust.
Absolutely. And I think I'm thinking now, just to bring it all full circle to someone who is unhappy with their life, the thought of, taking on a whole new career or, what they can do can be daunting to the brain as well. Yeah. So I think, if someone were to say, let me take 2 hours of every night and, try to figure out what I want to do, or try to put some time into a website or, building a product, and let's see what happens after a week. Let's do an experiment. Let's see if it gets anywhere. Let's see if I get any emails back or any people who are interested in what I'm doing. That to me sounds so much less daunting than, oh, I hate my job. I have to quit and try to figure out what I want to do with my life and hurry so I make a lot of money fast, Yep. Yeah, it's incredible.
You're right. And if somebody is at a job that they don't like, they have a couple options. If they want to go into a new field, they can, volunteer places on a Saturday or get a small part-time job for a week. I mean, you can get a part-time job for a week. You don't have to commit to it for the next 10 years. You can go to a seminar, you can do reading online, or you can just go get another job, risk it, know that if you don't like the new job, you're going to quit that one too. I mean, it's okay to do that nowadays. We're not in Japan or 1920s where you work the whole place the rest of your life. So, try and maybe fail. If that's your definition of fail, maybe fail. But actually, that's a big learn. And some people say, hey, you shouldn't use succeed or fail. But I'm a sports guy too, Sean. So in a way, I'd frame it that I'm okay with failing. I'm okay with not being perfect. I'm okay with not winning. I just want to be the guy in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, this has been great. I've personally learned a lot, and I think that guys who are in that position can definitely take a lot out of this. One thing I wanted to ask you before you go was, I was reading through your site and I saw, imagine if you could add 10 years to your life. So how do you do that?
So they've studied optimism, and when people are optimistic, they live longer. Mm-hmm. And they've studied people with heart failure. I mean, these aren't like sort of studies. These are like real studies where they took 7,000 people and studied them over their whole lives, and they've done these optimism things. And to be optimistic, it's so much easier than people think. But what's interesting is we're trained to be pessimists. We're trained for two reasons. I mean, there's chemical in the way our brain is built. We're meant to pick out problems because when we were cavemen, if we saw food and we saw a dinosaur, it's much more important to focus on the dinosaur going to eat us than the berries that we're hungry. So our brains actually developed to really pick out problems quickly. And then as we, you were an engineer, when people would come to you, or you're an accountant, people are normally giving things to you to find out problems. Hey, here's a drawing. Where's the structural defects? Here's a financial statement. I'm an accountant. Where's the problem in this financial statement? We're often not trained to pick out good things. So what we have to do is retrain our brain to pick out positive things in our lives, and it is a retraining. And the easiest way to do that is, at the end of the day, this is in the book too, is just to pick out all the good things that happen to you in the day. I have three different columns. I have the one is gratitude. I pick out all the things that I have gratitude for in my life, and I just make it really specific. Whether I just took a hot shower, I had an awesome lunch, I just made out with this hot chick. Because as we go through life, we're going to be like, hey, my life's pretty cool. Look at all these things. It retrains the brain there. Then I write down how I affect the world, and because I make a lot of good decisions in the world, but sometimes I forget how capable I am. So I write down those, and it helps me get rid of some anxiety and stress. And then I write down how I've been fortunate. And the way I say this is, where did the world smile upon me today? So where did I have good luck or good fortune? Did I get that awesome parking space? Did that prospect that I thought was lost call me back out of nowhere? Because it reminds me that the universe is a giving, supporting place, because sometimes I get caught up where the universe is against me. But at the end of the day, the universe gives me so much more. And sometimes I focus on the negatives. This helps me remember what an awesome place we're living in.
No, you just brought up so many amazing points. And I agree with you 100%. I did the same thing with the gratitude, writing it down every morning and every night. And it works. And it becomes a habit after a certain time. Scientifically, they say 30 days, but however long it takes, it becomes a habit. And yeah, you do retrain your brain, and eventually you become a different person. You're feeling gratitude all the time. Even when things go wrong, if you broke down or something, you, instead of immediately getting pissed off, you can immediately feel gratitude. Oh, well, at least I'm not on a bridge, or at least this. And it changes everything. Every person who I've learned from and listened and watched has spoken about gratitude being a key part of their success. So I think everyone can benefit and do what you did. And the second point I wanted to bring up was just getting the pen and paper out. Almost every podcast I do on here, everyone I talk to, no matter what it is, even if it's about dating and meeting women, one of their biggest tips is, grab a piece of paper and a pen and write this stuff down, write it down what you're not good at, and then improve on this, or write down what you're grateful for. It's something that no one does, but I think it just turns things that makes it more real and more effective, writing everything down. It's incredible.
Yeah, it does. And I just encourage everybody to find what works in their lives. I mean, most people, it's the first thing that they wake up, or right before they go to bed. Make that your pen and paper time, and experiment with different stuff. And a gratitude journal might be great for 3 months, and if it's not serving you anymore, switch. Don't be one of these people like, I said I'm going to do it forever, but just really listen to your intuition and just go with what really seems right.
Yeah, absolutely. And that pretty much put the icing on the cake to this podcast. And I just want to thank you for, sharing all this information with everyone. And where can people find you and find your book and more of that?
Absolutely. So my personal website is executivejoy.com. That's executivejoy.com. And the book is at experimenttoday.com. And the book, I call it a modern day business fable. It's about 150 pages. You get through about an hour and a half. So many people send me books, and I wanted to write a book that's quick, easy to read, and provides massive value. So I wrote it in a story, so it's actually fun to read. It's packed full of content. It has exercises if you want to use them on yourself. And if you want to make changes in your life, it's a story about a business owner who's separated from his spouse, drinking too much, some relationship problems at work, but it really teaches you how to take ownership of your life, how to make changes in your life. So if you are somebody that wants to make new changes, get this book. It's a quick, easy read. It's got exercises. When you get done with it, you can actually sign up for a small e-course for additional support. And if you do buy it and you mention MenProvement and you send an email with your Amazon receipt to info@executivejoy.com. Again, that's info@executivejoy.com. To me, I'll send you a 5-minute audio. It's called the Procrastination Toolbox, and it's a 5-minute audio that it's an inspirational audio. If you ever want to get your butt moving, you just listen to this audio, and boom, you're in action.
Nice, man. That's awesome. I appreciate that, and I appreciate everything else you shared with us today. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the MenProvement Podcast with Sean Russell. Get more episodes, more tips, and download our free self-improvement ebooks at www.menprovement.com.